The world does not always break with the sound of thunder. Sometimes it begins with a quiet tremble, small footsteps on a lonely street, a tremor of fear in a young girl's chest, the soft cry she hides because she thinks no one will hear her anyway. But this time, someone heard. This time, those trembling footsteps were about to shake an entire town when a group of men, feared by some, misunderstood by many, decided they would no longer look away. This is the story of how one ordinary afternoon turned into something unforgettable, something that would change the lives of a few frightened schoolgirls forever. If you believe in kindness, protection, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful real-life stories like this. Every day after school, 4 girls, Maya, Hannah, Liza, and young Chloe, walked the same route home. It wasn't the long walk that bothered them. It wasn't the heat or the noise or even the crowd. It was the 3 men who waited for them halfway down Sycamore Street, men who were much older, much stronger, and far too cruel to understand the weight of fear they placed on children. They were not schoolboys teasing classmates. They were grown men who had forgotten compassion. They started with mocking, then blocking the road, then insulting their uniforms, making comments no girl should ever hear. And slowly, day by day, the harassment grew darker, more threatening, more humiliating. The girls didn't tell their parents, not because they didn't trust them, but because they didn't want to cause more trouble at home. Maya's father worked double shifts. Hannah was being raised by a grandmother who already worried too much. Liza was shy and feared no one would take her seriously. And Chloe had recently lost her mother and didn't want to burden her grieving father. So they held their fear quietly, clutching their school bags, forcing smiles at home, pretending everything was okay. But the street remembers, the air remembers, and sometimes people we least expect become the answers we never imagined. On the corner of Sycamore and Emerson lived a group of bikers, leather jackets, roaring engines, tattoos that marked their stories like scars of survival. People crossed the street when they passed. Mothers pulled their kids closer. But these men, members of a local biker chapter, lived by a simple rule: protect those who cannot protect themselves. They didn't advertise it. They didn't brag about it. They simply watched the world silently, the way wolves watch over a sleeping forest. One of them, a tall man with long blonde hair named Rick, first noticed the girls. It wasn't the uniforms that caught his attention. It was the way their steps quickened when they reached the middle of the street, the way they folded inward, trying to make themselves small, the way Chloe, the youngest, kept her eyes on the pavement as if afraid to even look up. Rick wasn't the kind of man to interfere in other people's business lightly. But there is a certain look in a child's eyes, one that takes a piece of your heart and refuses to let go. The next day, the bikers stood outside their clubhouse, tuning engines and checking tires for an afternoon ride. The street was loud, filled with the thunder of machinery, enough to drown out almost any sound. But not the sharp yell of fear, not the muffled cry of a girl begging someone to stop. Rick turned first, his brothers followed. What they saw stopped them cold. The 3 bullies had cornered the girls again, this time near a parked car. One of the men blocked their path, leaning in far too close, smirking. Another had grabbed Maya's wrist. Liza clutched Chloe protectively while Hannah trembled, frozen in place. People walked by, pretending not to notice. Some whispered, some simply turned their heads. The world kept moving, but the bikers did not. Rick's jaw tightened. Without a single word spoken between them, every biker set down their tools and started walking. The rumble of their boots across the asphalt made heads turn. The bullies looked back, confused at first, then pale. They were used to intimidating young girls, not fully grown men who stared at them like predators who had finally found the thing that had been hurting the weak. The girls didn't know whether to feel relief or fear. They had only seen bikers from afar, and like many, they had believed the stereotypes whispered by neighbors. But when Rick kneeled down beside them, his expression softened in a way that felt strangely safe. He didn't scold them. He didn't ask questions. He simply said, "You're okay now." And for the first time in weeks, they believed it. But this wasn't the end. it was only the beginning. The bullies tried to act tough, pretending to laugh it off, claiming the girls were overreacting. But the bruises on Maya's wrist, the bloodstain on Liza's skirt where she had fallen the day before, and the trembling fear in Hannah's shoulders told a different story. The bikers didn't touch the bullies. They didn't need to. Their silence, their presence, their unblinking eyes did more than any punch could have. People gathered, phones came out, the street watched, and for once, it wasn't the girls who were powerless, it was the men who had tormented them. The bullies were told, quietly, calmly, without threats, that if they ever approached the girls again, they would answer to all of them. The message wasn't shouted, it was carved into the air with a certainty that could not be misunderstood. From that day on, the girls never walked home alone. The bikers were always there, sometimes in a group, sometimes one or two riding behind them slowly, engines humming like guardian lions. At first, the girls were shy. They kept their distance, clutching their books, unsure how to speak to men who looked like warriors from another world. But kindness has a way of dissolving fear. Rick taught Chloe how to fix a loose bicycle chain. Another biker, Sam, showed Hannah how to make paper flowers out of old receipts when she told him she missed her mother's handmade crafts. Liza found herself laughing at jokes she thought she'd forgotten how to laugh at. And Maya, brave Maya, who always protected the others, finally felt what it was like to be protected herself. Soon the whole town began to notice. People who once avoided the bikers now greeted them with nods, some even stopping to thank them. Children waved as the bikes roared past. The girls' families, once skeptical, became deeply grateful. The bikers didn't change who they were, they simply revealed the parts of themselves no one had ever bothered to see. But stories like these rarely end without one final test. One afternoon, the bullies returned, not to harass the girls, but to confront the bikers. They brought reinforcements, hoping to reclaim the dominance they had lost. The girls were walking home when the men suddenly surrounded them again, desperate, angry, humiliated by the town's reaction. Their voices were louder this time, their insults harsher, their frustration boiling. But what they didn't notice, what they didn't even think to consider, was that the bikers were already there, not watching from afar, not arriving late, standing behind them. The moment the bullies realized they were surrounded, everything changed. Fear replaced arrogance. Their voices cracked, their hands shook. They fell silent, ashamed and exposed, kneeling on the street as the crowd gathered once more. People filmed, cars stopped, neighbors watched from porches, and the bikers, not with violence, not with cruelty, but with unwavering resolve, made sure these men understood the weight of what they had done, not just to the girls, but to the community. The girls stood behind the bikers, no longer trembling, no longer shrinking. For the first time they were unafraid. They had found courage, courage reflected from the men who had stood for them when no one else did. And in that moment, Sycamore Street changed forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling stories that inspire hope, protection, and humanity. Before this story ends, here is a special request. Comment below. Kindness always wins. Let's fill the comment section with positivity and strength.